Or even a full professor gets 5 minutes, right? A full professor can be late up to 5 minutes. I don't know if that's the way it is in Norway.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really happy to welcome my dear friend Bill Pettit, Dr. Bill Pettit. And I know now this year, I mean, this time of the year, even it's 40 years ago since you first met Sydney Banks. And that, which resulted in 26 years of mentoring and friendship with Sydney Banks. So that is it's so wonderful to have like what I call the first generation of teachers and share of this.
Mm.
And I know you've been dedicating your life to helping people to gain more love, more understanding, more peace into their lives. And you have given hope to so many people all over the world. It's amazing.
Mm.
And you're almost 81 and still going strong. I think it's fantastic, Bill. So really happy to have you here. And yeah, you give a presentation as long as you feel it's okay, and then we can open up for questions and comments, and also leave some room at the end to tell us about your new exciting 6 months program starting actually next week.
Next week, yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
I just got I just got an email from my business manager that said there's only literally only a few slots left in the one that would work for people in Europe, because the second one is for people in Australia, and
Okay.
and in the eastern coast of the United States. But there's only a few, I think less than 10 slots left.
All right.
In the morning one. So and I want to keep my word that I said that I would keep it to a limit of 30. Maybe next January when I redo it for 6 months, then maybe we'll see that we can handle 40 without lessening the experience. But I'm not going to go over. People will be put on a waiting list for next year, or I suppose there may be a few diehards that are willing to get up in the middle of the night and do the second section, so, but people will be given the videos of the course for perpetuity. I mean, forever. I flicked that up. That's a long time, right? So they will be able to use it for themselves, for their family, for loved ones, for, yeah. So people will be given recordings of the course. So,
right.
Okay, well, so I one of the things I like to do is to see. I mean, I could just start speaking, but to see if there are maybe maybe 3 or 4. I'm not going to take a long time, but 3 or 4 questions that people might have that they're hoping, gee, I hope Bill addresses this question, so I'd like to, if it's okay with you, Dor, is to see if we could get 3 or 4 questions that people would hope that, so then they could put their mind to rest and maybe listen a little easier without wondering whether or not I'm going to answer their question or address.
Okay, let's do that. And maybe people can just unmute themselves and just post their question.
Here's somebody has their hand up. Can you let that person in?
Yeah, there. Can you just unmute yourself, Mary? There you are. There you go.
Hi. Yeah, I was hoping, Dr. Bill, if you could touch a little bit about stress, like chronic stress, and yeah, just in general about stress.
Can you be? I mean, I can in general, but can you be a little more specific, Mary?
Yeah.
What about chronic?
Yeah, what is your take on chronic stress, and what is your take on stress in general? Like what do you call it? Like the physical symptoms of chronic stress.
Okay. So when you say what is it my take, what do you mean? Do you mean where does it come from? Is it come from life, or does it come from us? I mean, that's a basic question. What do you mean when you say what is my take on chronic mental stress?
I think I'm just interested in hearing a new perspective on it.
Okay.
Because I do know that stress and urgency is created from our thoughts, but I'm just interested in hearing, just hearing it maybe a little bit deeper, and hearing a fresh perspective on it.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Mary, where can you tell me, where are you in Norway?
No, I'm in Copenhagen.
Copenhagen. Okay. Well, thank you. And yeah, be nice. I'm curious, George, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
No
always
worries.
curious to where people are speaking from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will gladly do that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Thank
We
you.
have Karen. Can you unmute yourself?
Eric?
Can you? There you go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the opportunity
Sure.
to listen to you and to ask questions. I'm in a situation with pains in my back. I fell down with my bike 4 months ago, and it's not healing up. And I'm going to see a doctor in the hospital in a month. I'm stressed because I'm in pain all the time, and also because I can't help thinking, what shall I do and what will happen? Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but this is my situation.
You have I hear your situation. Can
Yeah.
you, and where are you, by the way, physically?
I'm in Denmark, in Aarhus.
Okay. Where is that in Denmark from?
That's in the western
Copenhagen.
side of Denmark, the second
Okay.
city.
Okay. And can I, because I don't want to read into my head what I think your question is. What is your question, Karen?
It's how to calm myself down, how to relax with the pain I have. I'm sure that the stress I feel is not helping it to get any better.
So that you are aware of
Yeah.
that's adding to it. Yeah.
It's like I'm in a bad spiral.
Okay. And how long have you been exposed to the principles, if I can ask?
It was just after I fell down with my bike, and I sort of think, well, maybe I sort of was stopped.
To get a
And I
fresh
have
look at
to
life.
change something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was like 6 months ago, did you say?
That was just before Christmas.
Oh, just okay.
So
Okay.
I'm very new, but
Okay.
I've been studying intensively.
You've been reading Mr. Banks's books?
Yes, not all of them,
But and you've listened to some of the videos?
a lot.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. I'll be glad to address that.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we start? Or as we start?
No more hands up, at least.
Okay. One more, huh? Got one more?
Oh, Ellen.
Hi.
Hey,
Thanks.
Ellen.
Hi. Good to see you again. Could you please speak, Bill?
Yes.
Thank you. There you
Yeah,
go.
where are you, Ellen?
I'm in Norway,
Norway, okay. What
Yeah.
part of Norway?
just outside Oslo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could speak to physical symptoms after trauma, which stays on even though I don't feel it's, I don't see the connection. It's like my body remembers, but mentally I feel fine. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense cognitively. And you don't, don't need any specifics, but how do you define the word trauma?
Experiences which well, that's a good one. It would be easier if I just could speak.
Well, you can do either, but you know, most people, even the quote experts, define trauma as some experience that's very personal to that person, because we could name every experience that's ever been experienced, external that people had from 0 to 100 experience of trauma from.
Yeah.
Some more of the time the bell curve would be over, but there's always exceptions to people that know that it's unfortunate, but have somehow know something that it doesn't. So most people define like Vandercook, the people that say the body keeps score, which is interesting that you would say that. They define trauma as some external experience that overwhelms the coping ability, I would say the level of understanding of the person who experiences that external experience, that it overwhelms. It's beyond their level of understanding, so that they experience it as extremely painful. Is that a fair?
Yeah, extremely painful mentally, in my case then.
Right.
So the situation is not there anymore.
Right.
This
Your question is there a way, is there a chance for me to get free from this? Is that the question?
I know there's a chance, but I would like to hear more about it, because
Okay.
what the situation is not there anymore, but I am doing when I it was during musical lessons.
Right.
And when I started playing again. So when I play, I get these physical symptoms in my muscles.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And you'd like to not have that.
I know I'm just supposed to let it go, but yeah, it makes it difficult for me to play.
Okay. Great. Okay. And
thank you.
So how again, I'm going to kind of be so what would your question be? Because I hear a lot of statement, but I'm trying to find the question.
Mm-hmm. How do I get free from physical symptoms after experiencing trauma?
Okay. Good. Thank you. And thank you. You know, I hope I didn't sound insensitive. I just wanted to, I can't address a question unless otherwise I make stuff up, you know, of what I think the question is. And when I used to do that, I often was not very accurate.
No problem. Thank you.
My wife graduated from a university here in the United States called Michigan State University. And so she could have a t-shirt or a sweatshirt that says MSU, Michigan State University, right? And so I said to her one day, I said, well, I should have one of those sweatshirts. And she said, well, you didn't graduate from Michigan State University. Why would you have that? I said, because I'm always making stuff up in my head. Anyway, I don't know that she thought it was that funny, but I did. So, okay. So, so here we go. Yeah, you know, it's interesting that for some reason it's not, I guess, let's see here. For some reason, let's see. Okay. I'm trying to get the, let's see, let me get the gallery so I can see all of you. Yeah, okay. So I suspect, Tor, am I correct that we have a variation of people, some of people that have been on for like Karen for just a few weeks, and of the principles, and others that have been exploring it for many, many years. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wide variety of
Yes.
exposure time, as you call it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really appreciate people's questions, because it's interesting that people want to know about chronic mental stress, and all three of them, you know, either pain or physical symptoms. Some of you may have heard me say this, but see where my you're going to see that I have my Bermudas on, but that's okay. Some of you may have heard me say this, but I'm gonna stop saying that, because I could be saying that all day. I'm just gonna say it, and those of you that have heard me say it before, I just ask that you put up with me and maybe listen quietly, because even the story I'm gonna tell is that we can hear something 15 times before we actually hear it. Has anybody had that experience besides me? Okay. I'm reminded of Bob Dylan's song, "It's Blowing in the Wind." How many times, yeah, you know, people, anyway, there's many lines to it. But a year or so ago, I was reading The Enlightened Gardener The Enlightened Gardener, which is the first of two books that are together. This one, 4 of the psychologists in this book come back, 2 of them come back a year later. But I was reading because I was going to teach a course. I was reading the Enlightened Gardener for the 16th time. Did I say 16th? Yeah, 16th time. In preparation for this course. As I opened the book, I saw chapter 1, a conference in England. Does somebody see something on the other page adjacent to it? It says, "A note to the reader." I am humbled to say that has been there all 15 times that I read this book. And it was only on the 16th time that I had slowed down enough to the speed of life and was present enough in my life rather than in my thoughts. I see people making notes, and it's okay if you want to make notes and jot just a word or two down, but I would encourage you, I won't ban note making. I don't ban anything, but we're going to be recorded. And while you're making notes, you can't listen at the same time from the heart. You can listen maybe from the intellect, but not from the soul, not from the spirit. And that's where I'm going to be talking to as much as I can. For the first time in 16 times that I read this book, I noticed a note to the reader, and I've had the thought, I think that applies to me. I'm a reader. Maybe I should see what I didn't read the first 15 times I read this book, and that Mr. Banks thought was important enough to put on a page in the middle of the page with nothing else. Gee, maybe it would have been nice to have read this before, and I can either beat the poop out of myself for not having seen it before, or I can be grateful that I saw it the 16th time. And in my life, I found that gratitude works a lot better than self-incrimination or revenge or resentment. Anybody besides me curious to what it says? Note to the reader. In this simple book, the author endeavors to explain in his own unique way the connection between our spiritual nature and our psychological nature, our formless nature. We're something, even though I know the materialist would say that the brain somehow produces consciousness. To me, there is absolutely no evidence that that is true. And there's one hell of a lot of evidence that it isn't true. But that's just me. And I'm not asking you to believe anything I say. I want to acknowledge that I know that scientists, really good, caring human being scientists, because they can't prove that it is there, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Just because you can't prove something doesn't mean that it's not the way. And I won't go through all the experiences that people have had that certainly point to the fact that consciousness, and even back to thousands of years ago, that people knew that there was consciousness before form. So between our spiritual nature, our formless nature, and our psychological, our thought-created nature. Now, as a physician, pertinent to the questions that are being raised, I would even, if I, and Sid mentions this in some of his books, but I think he knew that he would be criticized by people saying, well, you've had no medical training. How could you possibly say what you just said? So even though in one of the books he says that chronic mental stress is the cause of all psychological impairment, illnesses, symptoms, and most physical illnesses, that's a pretty bold statement for a welder with a 9th grade education. But he's somebody who had a peek into the mind of God that I think is probably as large as any human being has ever had. So if I were to write this myself as Bill Pettit, a physician, I would say that it's important for us to find the connection between our spiritual nature and our psychological and physical natures, because both of those are formed. Spiritual is formless. Psychological is formed. We're using the power, creative power of thought, and every thought that you and I give credit to affects our 75 trillion cells in our body. Every thought that we have has form. It has electrical form. You can measure it. That's why people say, I just want to stop my thinking. I say, no, you don't want to do that. That's when they turn off the machine. There's a difference between being in your life and still, if you watch children play, they're thinking, but they're not in their life. They're not in their thoughts. They're in their life. True? Can I have a couple of nods? Yeah. Some of you have heard me say that my late wife, Sue, who I was married to from 1969 until she passed of cancer in October of 2000. And I was so fortunate to meet my beautiful wife 3 years later. And she had been widowed 3 years, or me 2.5. And we're now at 20 years together, Linda. But my late wife, Sue, in 1984, just after meeting Sid about a year or so, she looked at me one day and she said, boy, this is really pretty simple, isn't it? Meaning the understanding of the three principles. And I was not making it simple. I was trying to figure it out analytically. I know that none of you have tried to do that. I'm sure that you just heard the formless and had the instantaneous insight. Well, I didn't. I tried to figure it out analytically. So for her to say, gee, this is really pretty simple, was disarming. And I said, well, Susan, how so? How is it simple? And she said, well, I see that moment to moment, every human being, including you and I, obviously, are one of two places our whole life until we go back to the formless. We're either in our thoughts or we're in our life. And you can't be both places at the same time. Doesn't mean that you stop thinking. Any musician, I know somebody said that there were, any musician will tell you that, and any athlete of significant skill will tell you, you can't play a sport or play music and be in your thoughts at the same time. You have to just be present. And you know what to do next. You just know what to do next. You've spent the time, you've practiced, and now it's time to get out of your thoughts and into your life and to manifest the gifts that you have. So that was an eye-opener for me. Tor and I were talking briefly before the program, and I've become much more sensitive to when I'm in my life versus when I'm in my thoughts. And it could be a simple thing, like one time I filled up the coffee with coffee grounds, but I didn't put the water in because my thinking was somewhere else. So then I turned on the coffee maker and I wondered why I didn't have any coffee. It's because I wasn't present when I was doing that. Now, because I know that I am not always going to be present, I have changed it to where I always, my first thing I do is put the water in. And then I put the coffee in the coffee thing so that if someday I'm not present, the first thing I do, if, water without, you're not going to hurt my coffee machine if I have water with no coffee grounds. But I'm going to hurt the coffee machine if I have coffee with no water and I turn it on. Simple things. It's interesting. I experience that when I'm just present with people, and I am well rested today, and that memories and thoughts come to me out of the files that I haven't thought of for 20, sometimes 25 and 30 years. And as I gave that example of making some adjustment to putting water in first to kind of compensate for the fact that I could someday get distracted and it might save me from burning out a coffee machine. When I was in 1984, I was studying with Dr. Roger Mills and Dr. Rick Suarez and Dr. Kimberly Cadu, who were three PhD psychologists, and that's what, 39 years ago, that were being mentored by Sid. And I had just met Sid a little bit before, and he'd started to mentor me. And while I was there, it's a sad story, but one of the past editors of the Miami Herald came in for surgery for an elective surgery in a Miami hospital. And the anesthetist asked for something that he needed. And off of the shelf, now even that it would be on the shelf where somebody could grab it, the person whose thinking was somewhere else took off the shelf formaldehyde instead of what formaldehyde could kill you, right? Now, that person brought that into somebody who brought it into somebody who brought it to the anesthesiologist. It had big crossbones and skull on it, poison. If any one of those 3 or 4 people that handled that would have been present in their life, they would have seen, this is poison. This has no business. But no, it was injected into the bloodstream of that past editor of the Miami Herald, and he died in surgery. It took that for, I suspect, formaldehyde to be placed in a different place. There were deaths where people, the anesthesiologist was not present and put nitrous oxide when they thought they were giving oxygen, and people died. So somebody had the idea, we are human beings, we're prone to, it looks like at our present level, to times not being where we are. So they made the nitrous oxide into a square peg and the other one into a round thing so that you could not get the nitrous oxide unless you very specifically were doing it for a different reason. This may seem convoluted, but we pay a price sometimes for the life of themselves or others for not being present. And all we can do is do the best we can. It's not about beating ourselves up. I know one time I tried to put, because I was thinking about something else, I stopped on a trip and I tried to put diesel fuel into my car, which doesn't take diesel fuel. And luckily they've made it impossible for you to do that. So I'm going to do a little review of what I understand are these principles. I'm going to do the basics. Universal, the principles are a metaphor for something. I was talking to a friend in South Africa earlier today, and he really is a student of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, and we talked about the wisdom of the ages, that people have talked about essentially mind, awareness, and thought, that there's the energy of life is creative, it's conscious, it's intelligent, and it's creative. And I'm going to give what may seem as a silly metaphor that Sid used to say, if you don't have all three of those, you have nothing. You have no experience. You have nothing in life. But if really, as even the quantum physicists are saying, that what Sid said and what people said 10,000 years ago, that the entire universe, and they were called heretics, of course, back then, but the entire universe is the same energy in a different disguise. There's nothing can be separate from the whole. There's no Zeus sitting up on a mountaintop with thunderbolts, judging and punishing human beings. I won't name other Zeus or Jupiter or some other things that have been put forward. The entire universe is the same energy in a different disguise. Nothing can be separate from the whole. Wow. So what's the nature of that which is at the source of the universe? What's the nature of what and the attributes of what people call God? If everything, as Sid says, and as the quantum physicists say, that God is the energy of all things, either in form or formless, that means that we are God energy. Rumi knew that. I mean, poets have known that. Said we're a drop in the ocean. We're not the ocean, but we're not separate from the ocean. In the United States, Emerson once said, the poet and essayist, that what people call God is like a massive body of water with an infinite number of inlets. People in Norway would understand that with fjords, right? That we're all just a fjord. I probably said that word wrong, but it's okay. So here's the example that came to me. Well, first of all, Sid, those that haven't watched the Long Beach tapes, I would encourage you to first watch, interestingly, I would encourage you, if you're just new, to watch the first one, which is called The Great Illusion, and the third one, which is called The Experience. And the reason I say that as an introductory thing is because both of them are about 30 minutes, so I'd be asking you to give an hour of your time. And by the way, all this Sid, well, on 3pgc.org, which Tor can give people, now has 14 countries, I think, in this, Norway being one of them, that has a Three Principles community. They have access to many of Sid's videos, but even if you just go on www.sidbanks.com, you will get watch, listen, read, and you'll get the Long Beach, the Hawaii tapes, and the Washington tapes that were filmed at a university medical school, or sponsored by the medical school. But if you listen to Sid describing the experience, and he and I sat and talked about it a number of times, but what he says on the recording was he got up, he was going to try to explain to his late wife and of course Sid died in 2009, and his mother-in-law, who at the time he did not have a good relationship with, but later they became very close. He stood up to try to explain to them what he was experiencing at the end of this 3-day experience where he'd been awake quietly having insights. He said, I realize there's no such thing as insecurity, it's only thought. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood up and suddenly it was like I was being sucked down a tunnel. There was a buzzing sound and I was enveloped in a white light. And it was then that I realized the true meaning of God. And I started to cry. And what he saw was that God was pure love and understanding. And then we as humans were not separate from that. And at that moment, he said to his late wife, Barbara, he said, I've conquered this world. I'm home free. I've seen what people call God is. I've seen what life is. And I've seen how the two are connected. I've seen the connection between the spiritual and the physical and the psychological. And he said to his wife, you can imagine what his wife, he said, do you know what this means? Now, can you imagine your husband is a welder with a 9th grade education. He's worked in a pulp mill for 14 years. And you've taken a week off to try to learn how to stop bickering and be more loving to each other. And at the end of that week, he says this, I've conquered this world. I've seen what people call God is. I've seen what life is. And I've seen how the two are connected. And his wife said the words were frightening. They were terrifying. But he looked so peaceful and his eyes were so clear that I'd never seen a human being who had been that clear. And so I said to him, what does it mean, Sid? And Sid said some to the effect, in that moment, he said, number one, I will be writing books. Pardon me? You're a welder with a 9th grade education. Did you forget who you are? No, I've seen who I really am. I'm going to be writing books. He wrote 10 books, 6 of which have been published. There are still 4 manuscripts that have not been completed. 2, he said, psychiatrists and psychologists from all over the world, educators, shamans, people are going to seek me out. They're going to seek me out. They ask me to teach them what I've seen. David Banks was 12 years old at the time. He said it was strange. They would go away for a weekend. They would come back and there would be people camped out all over their front yard. Some of them would have come from India and places all over the world, did not know why they were there. Funny stories. Number 3, he said, he said to his wife, at this moment, you and I are going to be traveling because I'm going to be asked to speak at colleges and universities, not only here in Canada, but eventually in a number of places in the United States and eventually in Europe. Sounds pretty psychotic. Better get his ass to the hospital, don't you think? All came true. All came true. Sid would say these 3 principles of universal mind, universal thought, universal consciousness, I did not think them up. I did not even find them. They found me. They came to me as a way to try to explain the formless creative energy of life that people call God. It's a metaphor for God. I had a couple one time that said, don't say that word. We don't like that word. Please don't use the word God. And I said, fine, I'm fine with that. What would you admit that there's something at the source of everything that exists? Yes. They said, yes, that's obvious. I said, well, what would you like me to call that? They said, well, we like Dave. I said, well, fine. From now on, it's Dave. I'll be talking about Dave. It doesn't matter to me It's a label. It's a metaphor in form of something that cannot be described because there's nothing separate from it. But trust me with this metaphor, because I see it clearer than I ever did. And I will get to the questions, because if you understand a system, Sid saw the whole system. I saw what people call God is, I saw what life is, and I saw how the two are connected. If you see any system clearly, it will be very difficult to hurt yourself with that system. And you will be able to use the system to its full creative potential. Does that resonate as true for people? That just without an example even? Let's take gravity. There's a reason you give children sippy cups, because they don't understand that they need to put this back on the counter after they're through drinking. There's a reason when children are small, especially it seems like us boys, that you have to watch how high they get, because they keep jumping off things higher and higher to see how high they could jump off something without breaking an arm or a leg. You have to keep them safe because they don't understand the system of gravity. I had to take physics to get into medical school. I did not and do not understand electricity. I do not mess with electricity because of that, because I do not understand the system. If our country, and I say this reluctantly because we have not been fully invaded like your beautiful country was 80 years ago, but if we were invaded by a country and I was told that tomorrow my job was to be an electrician, whether I liked it or not, my life expectancy would suddenly go down to hours, because it would be very unlikely that within 4 hours I would not have electrocuted myself, because I don't understand the system. Now, luckily for all of us, there are people that understand the system of electricity and a lot of other things, so that we can even be having this conversation, and I can be looking at you, representations of you, and you of me, of you, you of me, thousands and thousands of miles away from each other. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me. Imagine a bed of flowers 4 feet by 4 feet, and let's say 3.5 feet high. And you cover the flowers on 3 sides so they can't get any light. And then you cover the top of the flowers so they can't get any light. So you've only left one end of the flower bed open to light. Is everybody with me? Maybe you can show me to show that you're conscious and intelligent and creative. What happens to the flowers? What do they do? I don't know how quickly they do it, but 100% of the time they will do it. What happens to the flowers? Can you show with, yeah, people, they literally start bending towards the light. Amazing. Now think of that. I think of what behind life is benevolent, beneficent. And I have run thought experiments about everything. I have a friend who had two small strokes recently in the last year or so, and he said, my mind is quieter than I've ever been in my entire life. And if it took these 2 small strokes, even though I have trouble finding words on occasion, if it took these, I'm having insights that I never had before because I've slowed down to the speed of life. He told me 2 days ago, I would not go back to before I had the 2 strokes, because they've brought me, quieted me down, given me less attention to the output of my brain. and made it more clear to me that I'm not this brain and I'm not this body, that I'm the formless energy that infuses it. So back to the flowers. Let's take consciousness. So the first thing that would have to happen, that's miraculous. I mean, how do you explain that? Somehow, some way, right? Well, let's say that consciousness says, wow, there's an awareness that says basically, well, I'm going to get enough light to survive probably, but nobody behind me is. This is not good. This is not good, but I have no idea what to do about it, but this is not good. That's consciousness. Mind, the intelligent energy of life, says, well, I see what the problem is, and I see the solution. The consciousness sees the problem. I see the problem. But we're basically screwed here. Yeah. Consciousness, mind says, wait a minute, there's a solution. If we bend toward the light, not only would we get more light, but many of the flowers behind us would get light. But I have no idea how to do that. So you've got consciousness and intelligence. One of them sees the problem, the other sees the solution. But if you don't have the creative energy of thought, you've got no solution. Because consciousness and mind say, see the problem, see the solution. We don't know how to do it. Anybody else been in that position recently where you see the problem, you see the solution, but you don't see how to do it? I say, okay, maybe this is relevant to what we're talking about. Divine thought says, I got it. I can catalyze mind into action and move us towards the light. So you've got universal mind, universal thought, universal consciousness. There's only one principle, but the three principles point to the fact that it's conscious, it's omni-intelligent, and it's omni-creative. As human beings, we have been given a gift of personal experience of consciousness. I think my lemon tree has that. I think my lemon tree is conscious. We've been given the personal gift of use of mind. There's only one mind. There's only one body of water. There's infinite number of fjords, infinite number of inlets. We get a personal use of universal mind, and we get the personal use of the creative power of thought. Now, here's the deal, folks. There are no two people that have ever lived on earth who use those three principles in the same way. There are no two people that have ever lived this earth, even identical twins. Within a very short period of time, their brains are different from each other because they're using the power of thought in a different way. Now, if we start to understand how the system works, we can be open to the idea that what if this is not our first home? This is our second home. We came from formless energy. We're here to learn something. I think it's to become, as Sid says, when the divine passes from the formless to the form, we as human beings are both spectators and participants in this spiritual theater called life. I think my lemon tree in the backyard is a participant. That flower bed is a participant. I don't know that either the flower bed or the lemon tree, or even the dogs and cats and wolverines and animals, the elephants and the rhino, I don't know that they get the gift to be a spectator, to know that they are divine energy in a form. Maybe they do. But it doesn't look like they do. But they are certainly guided. And the difference between us and the lemon tree, when those flowers bend towards the light, even the adolescent flowers bend toward the light. That's supposed to be a joke, folks. The adolescent flowers don't fold their little arms and say, "Make me. Think you can make me bend towards the light?" No, they don't. They bend towards the light. Because it's only us as human beings that can trust more on our intellect and our brain than on the divine intelligence that's at the core of our being. We're the only ones. And when we do that, I think the benevolent, beneficent energy of life tries to wake us up as gently as it can. I get itching on my forearm or on my hand. It's my first signal. What's hereditary is that I'll bet each one of us has different signals. Mine was depression. I went in and out of clinical depression for 20 years, 6 different psychiatrists, till I met Sid Banks. One of the finest teachers in this very humbly says that before he learned the principles, he had to practice meditation 4 hours a day to be able to continue to function, even though he had a doctorate degree in psychology. Sid said one time, he said, meditation is not a thing that you do, it's a state of mind where your personal mind is quiet so it can be replaced by divine mind. People ask, how do you do that? How do you deal with a thought thunderstorm? There's a word in English, maelstrom. I guess it's a really bad thought thunderstorm. The only thing I know to do is to do the best that I can to be where I am. I'll say that again. Anybody think they can do better than the best they can do? I do the best that I can to be where I am. Yesterday, because I wanted to get some things done, I took a little bit of caffeinated beverage later in the afternoon. And so I went to sleep fine, but I woke up about 2 and I went to the bathroom and I was still lying there at about 4. But you know what? I don't care. I'm not frightened by not thinking, by not sleeping, because I know that there's something for me to hear. And so I just lie there. And first thing I saw was, probably not so good to have caffeine at 3:45 in the afternoon. I got it. Okay. I tell people I learn very slowly, but I make up for it by forgetting quickly. I have to be reminded. But I will tell you this, if you go over 30 minutes a day giving attention to your stressful thinking, you will move from ease to dis-ease. 100% of the time. That's just how the system works. It's trying to help you remember who and what you are and quit listening to something that's going to take you further away from it. And how does it do that? Your mood, instead of being in a lighthearted, loving state of mind, you're going to find that you're a little more serious. Anybody ever get a little serious? Of course, you know, everybody's more responsible when they're serious, which is bullshit. Your feeling level is going to go down. Serious is right before irritability. As soon as you notice that you're serious, the next thing you're going to notice you're being irritable with people, even those that you love dearly. It takes a lot to get irritable with the policeman, 6'8" policeman down on the corner. You have to be psychotic to get irritable with the 6'8", but not with your kids or your spouse. This is before so your mood starts to go down. What happens to your level of deep calm and serenity and presence and a beauty of the awareness of the incredible beauty that's around every one of us, shouting every day? No, more important. My thoughts are more important than that beauty. And I wonder why I start getting anxiety. Gee, why would I have that? How could a benevolent source think that anxiety was a good idea? Well, it wakes me up like the rumble strips on the side of the road that keep me from going into the ditch. So mood, anxiety goes up. My thinking used to be clear, good attention. Now I'm losing things. I'm misplacing my keys, misplacing my car, the TV remote, my iPhone, I can't find it. Gee, would that be alarms, friendly alarms trying to tell me to slow down, get quiet, get present as best as I can, not judging how I'm doing? What about my body? I'm going to have pain somewhere. They're literally showing now that when we get into stressful thinking, it changes the microbiota in our bowel. There's a feedback mechanism back to our brain, and it lowers our pain tolerance by up to 70%. We are experiencing pain at sensory input of 30% of what most people experience pain. Because pain is, if I put my hand on a hot stove, I want my pain to work really fast. So I limit the tissue damage in my hand. There are two without, if I Googled on PubMed recently, I Googled chronic stress, mental stress, and chronic pain. And I think there were, there were at least 6,000 articles on it. Because it's becoming more and more. There are there's a sensory fiber and there's a cognitive emotional fiber. That's why people can have no sensory. There are husbands that get severe abdominal pains when their wives are starting to deliver the babies. They have no physical problem, but they're having severe incapacitating pain through that other. Wow. The answer is there are no shoulds. All you can do is do the best you can. If you need pain medicine, you go to the doctor, but know that the best chance of spiritual understanding brings spiritual healing. And you don't have to get the physical healing to get spiritual healing. In fact, it doesn't work that way. But if you get spiritual healing where you are at peace, you maximize the depth and the possibility and the power of physical healing. Does that make sense? I just this morning had reason to be exposed to, and then I'm going to take a Giordano Bruno, who said knowledge and love are two cosmic forces apparently separate in nature. They spring from the same potency. I don't know if you know who Giordano Bruno was, 1548 to 16. He was declared a heretic by Pope Clement, and they burned him at the stake as a heretic because he said Copernicus was right, Galileo was right, etc. And even as they were burning him, he said, I'm going to be fine. My fear of death is minimal, if it's not existent, but your fear of the truth is obviously very large to where you would have to do this to me. So I know I took most of my time, and I can go, I'll be fine with a 10-minute break. So that's the best I can do. I wish I could do better, but that's the best I could do today. So
how long time do you have, Bill?
well, I can do another 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah, I'll be fine with 12 or 13 minutes. Yeah.
So I guess not so much room for a lot of questions.
Yeah, I apologize. In fact,
Yeah,
I'll
no.
even be glad to come back to you to get in touch with me. And if people say now we've really got some questions for that guy, that big-eared guy from the United States.
I make a note of that. Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Good.
I'm glad to do.
Anything you want to add? I mean, you have the title and everything from your upcoming One Cause, One Cure, Fresh Hope. Is there anything you want to address on these issues?
Well, it's just that I think some of you will be getting and you'll probably get it, that you can share. I took 2 articles that talk about that spiritual understanding brings simplicity and clarity to medical research and scientific research, where if you don't understand the spiritual, it looks confusing and it looks contradictory and it looks complex. And if you understand the system, including the formless energy, intelligent energy of life, that's for those that are interested. You won't need that course to have a happy, contented life. Although I think there are some, it will be deeply grounded in increasing your spiritual understanding, but also will be that people's grounding will be so deep that they can answer the questions of scientists, of educators, of people that say, yeah, but. I think that the grounding will be so spiritual. Understanding brings incredible simplicity and clarity to scientific knowledge that looks confusing. So those people that have that as an interest, I would encourage you. I mean, and again, there's only a few slots in the morning one, and the afternoon one, it would be in the middle of the night for you guys. So
right.
yeah,
Now people can look it up, because on all the invitations to this webinar, there's also a link to your program.
Good.
You can go in and just check it out. And
Good.
but I think this you are, I mean, how you show the connection between our spiritual nature, our psychological nature, and a physical nature. I mean, that I think that whole the links here, I think that is so fascinating how you show that, and what it means for how we can operate in our lives, both the physical and psychological and spiritual, and see that it's all one.
It's all one. And without judgment on ourselves or others, is psychological innocence. I have had so many that have their chronic pain has disappeared once they forgave somebody they hadn't forgiven, once they had forgiven themselves or they hadn't forgiven, once they saw that their family thought that worry was how you showed love, one lady said, and the day that I saw that that was nonsense, my chronic pain of 35 years disappeared in an instant. So spiritual healing will maximize it. It doesn't mean that, well, you do your best you can, but if you go in the direction of spiritual healing, you're going to be much more likely to find the answer. I mean, the way the system works, whether we like it or not, 30 minutes or less, activation of the stress response, ease. 2.5, approximately from the medical research, 30 minutes to 3 hours a day, dis-ease. Not disease, but dis-ease. If you get over 3 hours a day of chronic mental stress and you think it's coming from the outside where it's not, once you start to realize that the only source of mental stress for me is the only person that can create that is in the same underpants I'm in.
Yeah. Getting back to your...
Last I looked, there's only me. There's only room for me.
And you have this statement, well-being and inner peace is possible no matter what. Can you say something on that?
Yeah, I've never met the person that wants to die righteously miserable. I could have had a happy life except for, and list a bunch of external things that happened. I've never met the person that wants to die righteously miserable. I've met people who didn't have hope and didn't have a sufficient. To me, every time I experience psychological tension or pain, it's an opportunity. I get excited because it means that my level of understanding, Sid said, there's an infinite number of doors of understanding these principles. Infinite is a really big number. It's not like learning to ride a bicycle or learning to swim. So if I feel emotional pain, I know I'm excited that I'm getting an opportunity to go through a few number of more of those doors of understanding, if I'm willing to do the best I can to get present. I see that there's questions, and one question at least, but I think it's probably best for me to take the 14 minutes that I have before my next program, and I'm glad to either address that in an email, or if for us to set something up in the rather near future, Tor, I'm glad to do that. Say an hour of just questions and answers. Okay.
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 Well, thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah,
It's
you're
a
welcome.
pleasure as always, really.
Good.
And I will put this recording out on the different Facebook sites maybe tomorrow, I think. Yeah, I will have it there.
Okay, and maybe you can unmute people so at least I can say goodbye to people.
Yes, I can.
It's been wonderful, folks. It's been wonderful, and
Yeah,
I
they need to unmute themselves. Yes.
Yeah, I was hopeful. And for the lady that had the question, if you let, you can give her my email if you let the question. But yeah, but I look forward to answering it. Know me, and do you say know me? Yeah. Okay. Okay, folks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Bill.
Dr. Bill.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. All right. All right. Good night.